would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please don't hold that against me. It's a big day, folks. My oldest graduated from high school today. Congrats to you, my boy. And it's moments like this, right, when when the babes start leaving the nest. That might be a moment when you start thinking about new real estate thoughts. I know that's one of the things contributing to what I'm doing. If you'd like to reach out, feel free to do it via the website at therebelbroker.com. From there, you can click on the contacts button in the menu bar. Send along any ideas, suggestions, observations, or questions that you might have. And, you know, I would like to take a second, and sometimes I feel like I do this too much, and I apologize. I want to thank all the listeners who have stuck with the show through some of the remodeling time when the show kind of took a hiatus for a week. You know, it was, I think anyone who's putting out something like a podcast, right, and they're looking at their numbers, and they're trying to figure out how much good they're doing, right? One of my goals here, and it sounds corny, it honestly is to really help you be able to make better decisions, to give you good info. And 99% of the interactions I have with folks who listen to the show are ridiculously positive, right? Very, very, make me feel good about it. Give me kind of juice me up to get back in the seat and do another show. And I really thought I had screwed up by not having come up with a smarter plan. I had a plan, but unfortunately the plan had to get pulled up by a week and a few days when I got the opportunity to do my remodeling earlier than planned. Everything kind of fell by the wayside, and for a week, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, nearly a big chunk of a month, the show was very sporadic, not happening on certain days as I'm painting and doing all this other crazy stuff. And I just want to thank all of you who have sort of roared back and have helped the show start not only getting back to the numbers it was getting to before, but exceeding those numbers. And I couldn't ask for a better audience of people. And I just wanted to thank you very much for making this show a part of your routine. Okay. So we've gotten out of the way the part of the show where I ask you to head on over and send me any messages you might think are important, stuff you want to share with me or things you want to ask me. Let me also suggest that while you're there, click the big red button at the top of the show. Take the survey to support the show is what's written on that button. You'll be asked for your email address 2 times. Please use the same email address both times, and make sure it's an email address that you actually will get messages on, because as a thank you for going to the trouble of taking that demographic survey to support the show, you will be included in a drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card. And if you are picked, the message telling you you've won will go to that email address. And it's also how you'll get your Amazon gift card. So make sure you're using a good email for that. That'll happen. Well, today's the first day of June. So we will be doing a drawing within the next week or two. So by submitting your name now, you'll be able to make it for the drawing that's just going to come up here in 10 days or so. So good luck to all of you who have already submitted your names, and to those of you who will between now and the time we do the drawing. And congratulations to all the folks who've won $50 gift cards totaling somewhere in the neighborhood of $450. Okay. We've got a few interesting tidbits of data, and each day when I'm reviewing what I want to share with you, I honestly am actively trying to seek out good news, stuff to cheer you up. As it relates to things we've been talking to recently. And man, is that getting hard. We've got another couple of pieces of data here that actually fit in pretty nicely with stuff we've talked about over the last week. And we've got a few bits of good news here, depending on what you consider good news. So U.S. home prices rise at the fastest pace in 3 years to record highs. We are, let's see, a new record high, even if you go all the way back to the peak. There was some weird article I saw earlier today claiming that we weren't at the peak, and they were trying to make some sort of statistical point that if we had continued to see the statistical growth we should have seen, then it would be far higher than now than it is. And that's only if you're on drugs. Anyone who wants to talk that run up from about 1999 or 2000 up to 2006, 7, anyone who wants to call that a normal market is needs to put down the crack pipe. And this is something that occurs a lot in conversations I have with real estate people. And believe it or not, I don't like having conversations with real estate people. It's always so depressing. But they pine for those good old days, and those are not the good old days. Those are the days when the Titanic was heading for the iceberg at a speed that we couldn't turn away. The stupidity that built that horrible, horrible run up in prices on homes was very unreal. It was subprime lending. It was this crazy infusion of cash that flowed out everywhere, and people who really shouldn't have been able to borrow at the levels they were borrowing were able to borrow. All right. Having said those words, we can cover some more interesting news. Consumer confidence drops to its weakest since February. That's kind of interesting. Consumers are somewhat less upbeat than in April, but overall remain optimistic that the economy will continue expanding into the summer months. Those that were saying business conditions are good edged down from 30.8% to 29.4%, so not a huge drop. Those stating jobs are plentiful declined marginally from 30.3 to 29.9. But doesn't this feel about right, though? Given the stuff we're seeing, sort of a slouching trend towards less optimism kind of feels like something that would make sense given what we've been talking about in terms of other numbers that we're tracking and what effect those things might have on the real estate market. Now, next, another good piece of data I like to cover. Fannie Mae reports that the mortgage serious delinquency rate declined in April, and it's now the lowest since January of 2008. Now, let me make sure we're clear on what that number is. This is the single-family serious delinquency rate, declined to 1.07 in April from 1.12 in March. And it's down from 1.4 in April of last year. So all across the board, the serious delinquency rate is down. However, and I'm going to wait until we get some good numbers on this, the other end of that spectrum are folks who are now behind by 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. The number I want, that usually comes out within a week or so of this number. I'm not sure why they don't put them out at the same time, but that's an interesting number. What I want to see are the numbers relating to folks just starting to get into this problem, just starting to go behind. Why? Because we've already talked about other things relating to debt and the probability that if things start to get a little dicey, we will see the beginnings of just those first whiffs of delinquencies, not serious delinquencies, just the 30 days late, the 60 days late, that type of thing, sooner rather than later, based on what we talked about before in terms of the article I shared, I think it was Monday, about what folks tend to stop paying first. So that would be an interesting piece of data for us to take some time and think about. Now, just for your benefit, the terms you're going to want to look for in these things are 60 plus days delinquent. That's loans that are 2 or more payments delinquent, including loans in relief, in the process of foreclosure, or in the process of bankruptcy. Total servicing minus current and performing, and 30 to 59 days delinquent loans. Then there is 60 to 89 days delinquent, includes loans that are only 2 payments delinquent. Serious delinquency is all loans in the process of foreclosure plus loans that are 3 or more payments delinquent. So what I want to know is when we start seeing those 2 payments delinquent, right? The first, I would love to see who's 1 payment delinquent and then see what the number is with 2 payments delinquent. I think those are numbers I would like to see in terms of trying to get a handle on anticipating, right? That's our goal, right? The best way to make good decisions is to have some sort of data to help you make moves in one direction or another that make more sense. Any decision you make is going to make sense in the absence of any information, right? It's like flipping a coin. Wherever it lands, whatever's showing when it stops flipping is what you get. But if you could collect more data to give you more insights into what the result would be, that just makes your decision-making process more effective, right? So that's kind of the goal with that. Let's see. Next, and this one really caught my eye because it fits in so perfectly with what we've talked about over the last couple of days. We talked about how folks with really low credit scores have dropped, and we talked about why. What's interesting now is I am starting to see articles that celebrate this, but in the other direction. So the headline here is credit scores hit record high. So given all the stuff, and again, this is a common sense one. I don't think any of us need, we want to make sure we're getting good information, but I don't think any of us for a moment are imagining, given what we've seen happening in the economy, what we've been seeing happening with employment, how what we've been seeing with the delinquency rate on automobile loans, student loans not getting paid, all of these various things. I do not buy this idea that things have gotten so much better. The jobs we've been getting tend to not be very good jobs, not credit score building jobs, unless you're just someone who just got out of high school and you're looking for that first job to start building any kind of credit at all. But what's interesting here is the refrain we're going to hear over the next 6 months is not a reduction in folks at the lowest end of the credit rating. It's going to be a celebration of folks at the higher credit ratings. And some of the things that are said by these experts, frankly, scare me. They're said with enthusiasm. They're said with this feeling of these should make you feel good about this, and they don't. So I thought we'd hit some just from this article, and this is from Realtor.org. They start off by saying credit scores among U.S. consumers surged to a record high this spring. If you've been listening to the show for the last year, you know why. We started talking about all the artificial ways that credit scores are being increased starting this time last year. So it makes complete and total sense that these changes have taken effect enough that we're starting to see it affect average credit scores, right? And there's more to come. We're going to see more on July 1st, and they will celebrate this. Each quarter, they will see credit scores reaching record highs, the number of people with high credit ratings reaching record highs, and they will celebrate it. No one will say, why is that happening? They'll try to explain it as a more robust economy and more wonderful things going on. But I'll tell you, the specifics of what's going on with the economy do not explain this. Aside from the artificial bloating of credit scores through the actions we've talked about on this show. All right, so here we go. And they talk about the irony bell rings in my head whenever I read most of this stuff. And then passing, they mention what we talked about yesterday. The share of borrowers considered among the riskiest borrowers hit a record low. The higher credit scores could be a boon for the mortgage market. A good credit score can help borrowers snag a better mortgage rate and better their chances of qualifying for financing. Yes. And let's remember what all of this fiddling with credit ratings is designed to do. It is designed to place people who previously would have been unable to borrow because of a poor credit score. And we need to be honest about what a poor credit score equals. Right? Of course, there's no info on you. You haven't established a credit history. Now, I'm working with my freshly graduated son from high school on helping him build a credit history, right? We've gotten him a checking account. We've gotten him a starter credit card with a very low limit on it. We are going to be buying a car, and he's going to be on the loan, and he will be responsible for making sure those payments get made. So I'm jumping through the hoops to try to teach my son to be a responsible borrower. Now, nothing about any of that has anything to do with anything other than the fact that I want him to be a skilled and responsible person when it comes to managing his finances, right? And I get that there are people who don't have folks in their lives that get them through that. But the reality is we all need to understand that some people suck with money and other people don't. It has nothing to do with how smart they are or how dumb they are. It's like anything else. There are some people who don't know how to drive, who suck at driving. Well, it's because they were never taught well, right? It's a skill like anything else. It's something you learn. It's a habit you develop. You don't consider it normal to pay your rent late. You don't consider it normal to pay your credit card late. It's just I'm not really sure why there's a lot of weird debate and a lot of weird baggage gets thrown on this, but that's the way it is. So the real solution to the problem is not make it easy for subprime borrowers to borrow. The solution is to train subprime borrowers to be more responsible borrowers. Because they're subprime, by definition, they are poor borrowers, right? So what we're doing is we are giving participation trophies in the financial world, right? These are folks who haven't done anything to prove that they are good financial risks. In fact, their credit histories probably more often than not indicate they are poor credit risks. So we're just artificially giving them that little gold star sticker that says 600 credit rating or 650 credit rating, despite the fact they haven't earned it, right? And this is very bad, right? It's empowering people who shouldn't be borrowing, who should be learning how to borrow better, to borrow. We're handing a loaded gun to someone who doesn't know what a gun does. And that's bad thing number one, right? We are potentially putting borrowers in a position where they will be held responsible for something they are not prepared to be responsible for and may not fully understand the implications of what they're doing and how much their lives can be ruined. Speaking as someone who had to talk to dozens of different people who just with wide eyes couldn't fathom that they currently found themselves in a home that was worth $100,000 less than what they owed on it. And never should have gotten that loan. I don't want to do that again. I think that is one of the cruelest things that was ever done. You are not helping someone by making it easier for them to borrow when they're not qualified to borrow. It may make the lender feel better. It may make the politician who pushes for the law feel better. Maybe there's some collective angst that gets relieved by that. But when you look at the aftermath of the burden of debt on someone who wasn't prepared for it, it is horrible. And I don't want to ever see that again. Thank you very much. And that's just that part of it. And you know what? Maybe on a cosmic level, that's not even the biggest problem. What is the biggest problem? Well, we just talked about the fact that we're currently at the highest rate. The average price is the highest ever, right? What will this do to that? Think of all the things that are now in place that are going to impact the market of buyers. Foreclosures expiring after 7 years, right? Being on the credit score. Millions of people. We talked about yesterday, 12 million more people because of these changes to credit score calculations are going to suddenly be able to borrow. What does that do to you? Let's say you're Joe Buyer or Josephine Buyer out there looking to buy, and suddenly instead of there being one or two people competing with you for a home of a specific kind, now there's a dozen. Does that feel anything like the last time we got ourselves into this mess? Because it should, because that's what happened. So far, the good news is credit scores are at a record high. The bad news is the results of that increase in credit score are going to potentially put more individuals at risk and increase the house prices you're paying because it'll add more buyers to the market. It will artificially add more buyers to the market. And that sentence, it blows my mind that I can once again say we have been for a while now, but this is just one more layer to the cake. We are artificially creating more buyers. We are doing it again. We did it for 7 years, starting in 99, and it culminated in very bad stuff. And it started off very slow, right? We kind of had a little trickle and there was this big rush. Here's what worries me. If we kind of assume that the past trend might be informative, that we might be able to draw some conclusions from things that actually happened before, over the next couple of years, given the sheer number of folks that suddenly fit into this category of being subprime, of being able to borrow, of newly being able to borrow after they've already had a failed property before with a foreclosure. And the statistics on people getting re-foreclosed on, the folks who've been foreclosed on do not tend to be better at managing their money after that 7-year period of time. At least that's the last set of data I saw on that is a little bit old, but you shouldn't feel confident that those folks are a better risk because they tend to be smarter once they've been through it. Only if those folks have gone through some sort of training to get better at handling their finances or making financial decisions. So none of that should make you feel confident. All right, folks, we're going to continue with this in a minute, but for right now, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back, so don't go away. Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner, broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909. Welcome back, everyone. We're running through the celebratory parade that seems to be what a lot of economists and folks that should know better are saying about the current trends we're seeing relating to credit. Here's one from Chris Doridis, director in the economics group at Moody's Analytics. Higher scores lead to more available credit, which equals more buyers, by the way. We'd see more activity in terms of loan approvals and credit card approvals, more spending, and that would have a ripple effect across the economy, increasing aggregate demand for goods and services. Right. But we've also talked about how we're already seeing overextensions in credit of HELOCs, credit cards. And we've also talked about how we've seen an increase in delinquencies on credit cards. Right? We talked about that earlier this week. Now, the folks with scores below 600 hit a record low of about 40 million, or 20% of U.S. consumers. That's down 25.5%. That's down from a 25.5% peak in 2010. Rising credit scores will prompt banks to make more credit available to consumers and at a cheaper cost. So remember, think about cost as the whole enchilada, right? Don't think about it as just interest rates. I mean, the terms of the loan in general are the costs, right? So it might mean that we start seeing products in lending that aren't at the 20% down mark or more, right? We've already talked about how we have already 3%, 2%, 1%, some 0% down loans. Wouldn't surprise me if we start seeing expansion on those lower down payment loans based on these, shiny new higher credit ratings. From the senior director of research and consulting at TransUnion, a credit reporting firm, the domino effect of lenders would be more consumers they can market to and more consumers who may be credit eligible who weren't in last year's models. And again, what does that equal for you as a buyer or seller? Now, as a seller, this equals more buyers for your property. So congratulations. As a buyer, that represents more competition for you. As an investor, it represents more competition for you. And by artificially increasing the number of buyers, I know I keep saying this is kind of the core truth. By artificially increasing the number of buyers, you're artificially increasing the price of homes. It's that artificiality that killed us last time. It is when things are done that probably have the most pure of intended results, but it's those unintended consequences, which is what got us last time, that caused this stuff. And of course, none of these folks care, because read between the lines on this. What this is going to equal is banks writing more loans that they sell to the government. They're going to sell those to Fannie and Freddie. They're going to sell them on the secondary market. You can bet on it. And the person on the hook for all of those loans when things went bad was all of you. And we talked about that repeatedly. The hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of billions of dollars that needed to be given to bail out all of these institutions based on these loans that went sour, to the point where they finally gave up on actually authorizing specific amounts of money and just said, whatever amount it adds up to, we'll cover it. And I believe once everything was said and done, it was some in the neighborhood of, I wouldn't even hazard a guess. I know the first time around they asked for $250 billion. The next time they asked, I think, for $250 billion. I think they did one more third round where it was even more than $250 billion. We're clearly into the trillions in what that is. Now, they go on to explain a little bit in the next paragraph about what's causing this. And they're really focusing on the fact that foreclosures and bankruptcies are leaving American credit reports. 6 million. The interesting in that one is that they point out that more than 6 million consumers will have personal bankruptcies disappear within the next 5 years from their reports, according to Barclays PLC. And my understanding is that there's a huge front load of that. So in other words, we're going to see a lot of those in the next 2 years. Consumers will now have a greater chance of getting approved for financing after negative events. Foreclosures stay on credit reports for up to 7 years. We talked about all that yesterday, so we need to recover that. So, how do you manage this reality? With each passing day this week, with each thing we've talked about, with each thing that we've reviewed from previous shows, it really does feel like deja vu. We are absolutely doing the same stuff that we were doing last time, to the point where not only do I find myself saying the same things, we're seeing the exact same outcomes. One of my strong opinions was that this may be the last season that you could really pull the big money out of your property, depending on what market you're in. Given what I'm hearing, it sounds like this stuff could drag on for a bit longer. We've got a surge coming now. We might see a situation where property values continue to ramp up over the next year plus, until we hit that critical tipping point again, where simply too many people are out there buying, too many folks getting loaned more money than they should get loaned based on artificial credit scores. Last time it was based on simply ignoring credit scores and doing stated income for folks. Exact same things happening. The exact same outcome is occurring, just a slightly different path. We're just interfering with a slightly different part of the equation that gets us where we are. I would love to hear from you guys on this. A lot of times I'll talk about some of these more serious subjects, and they'll be the least response I get from folks who listen to the show. And frankly, when I have a nightmare relating to real estate, it's invariably one of these things. It's this kind of stuff that really leaves me wondering what is in store for us. Because all of this amazing, crazy, wide open credit stuff is so exactly counter to what our lesson should have been after 10 years passing between now and when we had our last big dip. It amazes me these lessons aren't being learned. That there is not a universe where everyone deserves a loan. I'm sorry. It doesn't exist. And the methods we use to gauge credit worthiness should remain independent of political baloney. It should be math. It shouldn't be jury-rigged math. It should be the easiest math ever. Okay, you bought a car. You made your payments on time over the life of the loan, and you paid it off. Congratulations, you get a boost in your credit score. You made your power bill payment every month, your water bill payment, your cell phone payment. I'm sorry, those aren't instruments of credit. People may check your credit for those to discover whether you're someone who just never pays any of that stuff. But the bottom line is if I'm the phone company, you stop paying the phone bill, I turn off your phone. You stop paying the water bill, I turn off your water. You are no longer able to consume the thing you were paying for. If you stop making your payment on a house, I can theoretically take it from you, but it's going to take me a very long time. And the lessons that have been learned is that you won't be denied the thing you were paying for. What's interesting? Here's a very interesting thing. I told you once that I dabbled in folks who were delinquent once. This is going back a while. This is back when I lived up near Auburn, California, in a little town called Cool. And I was very much enamored with the idea of doing pre-foreclosures, right? So I'd go down to City Hall and, yes, on microfiche, and I would look up folks who got delinquency notices, like 30-day, 60-day, 90-day delinquency notices within the last month, right? I would just look for the stuff and once I caught up, I'd only look for the stuff that came in that day or that week. I usually went in once or twice a week. And nothing ground my soul down more than encountering these folks. But let me tell you something I learned from that. The stuff that people will stop paying is bizarre. So I walked into several homes where they had stopped making their house payment with a brand new car in the driveway, all paid up. They weren't delinquent on the payments. Why? I had a conversation with them. I said, well, what made you stop paying your mortgage first? Well, they'll come and take the car. If I stop payments on the car, they'll take the car, and I need the car to get to work or to look for a job or whatever, was going on. I'd also noticed that they had satellite dishes and their TV was on. And well, yeah, where have you trimmed? You'd discover that the mortgage was the first thing they stopped paying. They kept paying the cable bill. They kept paying for HBO and Showtime and Cinemax and Stars and all the various channels, but they stopped paying their mortgage. Well, why didn't you stop paying? It was, I can't remember what in today's dollars, getting the full cable package is what, $150 a month? Well, why wouldn't you stop paying that? Well, if I do, they'll turn it off. Right? So understanding the decision-making process that goes on when folks are faced with these credit problems is something I've been focusing on this show for the past couple of weeks, because I think that reality is the same reality we faced last time. And it ended up where it ended up. And I don't want to go there again. Or if we do go there, I don't want to be the guy who had concerns about what was going on in real estate, but never really pushed it, right? I thought, I'm a nut. I'm probably the outlier. I have problems with the way lending is going. I'm stunned at how much folks are being able to borrow. I warned my clients, hey, you really shouldn't get that 110% loan. You really should have more skin in the game. You'd be much happier. I never give the whole "your home will always be worth more" speech to people, even back in those, because I had been through downturns in the 90s and in the late 80s and in 2000. So I knew that stuff fluctuated. And depending on the timing of your life, you could get hosed. I've had clients who in the 90s lost money on the house they sold because it was simply the timing. The market was down and they had to sell. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the final thing will be. But I sure would like to be forewarned. And I'd hate to look back and think, man, I've already talked about before how I kick myself for not taking my own advice when I suggested folks invest in Round Rock, Texas. Because sure enough, over the next 12 months, gangbusters in Round Rock, Texas. Still kicking myself for over a year ago saying Sacramento's where I should be investing and getting some investment going. And then I didn't do it. I still look at Sacramento. I'm still looking at Sacramento as a place to go. I still think there's some potential opportunities there. But I think I have missed the big growth, right? It's gotten to the point now where people are writing articles about the real estate market in Sacramento, how great it is. And you want to be in there before that happens, right? I refuse to be the guy who didn't listen to my own advice when prices were high, and I, for some reason, chose not to sell. So at least I'm putting or working to put my money where my mouth is on this one, because I'll tell you what, the indications I'm seeing are concerning, and everybody is celebrating all this, and that's why you feel like the odd man out. All the big financial folks are saying, "Oh, this is great. Finally, this will be a big boon to the economy. People will buy more goods and services. Great." They'll go into debt for more goods and services. They won't be buying them. Buying assumes you take cash money and you pay for something. People will be going in, just like you don't buy a house. You go into debt for a house, right? You go into debt for a car. Unless you just write a check for that thing, you're going into debt for that car. Maybe to be a smarter investor and a smarter manager of your own money, you need to stop saying, "Oh, I just bought a house." You need to start saying, "I just went into debt for a house." Or anything else you buy on credit. I just went into debt for a new TV set. I just went into debt for a new computer. You want to hear the ultimate crazy thing? One of the folks that I remember dealing with way back in the day when I was doing this pre-foreclosure stuff, there was someone who was charging all that stuff, the TV bill, all that stuff was getting onto a credit card, and they were managing this stuff by moving the indebtedness from one credit card to another credit card. There's rules now. There's supposedly new regulations in place or new systems in place to catch that stuff. But they would bounce the credit from credit card to credit card. Creative, But ultimately, self-defeating unless you figure out a plan to pay that stuff off. All right, folks. I realize I meandered a little bit today. This was a little bit more of Robert just sort of spinning things inside of his head and letting them fall out. I hope it's been valuable in some way. I swear I will make it a goal to finish off the freaking week with something on an upbeat note. Maybe I'll just talk about my sons for 30 minutes, who make me very happy. And I'm particularly proud of my oldest today as he heads off to do his own thing in the world. As a side note to that, if I have any listeners up in Seattle, let me know. I will be there getting my son settled at the end of August, and I would love to have a fabulous Seattle cafe with someone who's up there, and we can chat real estate. Thanks again for listening, everybody. I'll talk to y'all next time.